Arthur Conan Doyle, The Return of Sherlock Holmes. The Adventure of Black Peter, Part 2. Holmes had been examining the cover of the notebook with his magnifying glass. "There is some discoloration here," he said. "Yes, sir, it is a blood stain. I told you that I picked the book up from the floor." "Was the blood stain on the top side or the bottom side?" "On the side that was touching the floor." "Which shows, of course, that the book was dropped after the crime was done." "Exactly, Mr. Holmes. I understood that point, and I thought that the murderer dropped it while escaping quickly. It was lying near the door." "I suppose none of these investments were found among the dead man's belongings?" "No, sir." "Do you have any reason to think this was a robbery?" "No, sir. Nothing seemed to be taken." "Oh dear. It is certainly a very interesting case. And there was a knife, was there not?" "A sheath knife, still in its sheath. It was lying at the feet of the dead man. Mrs. Carey has identified it as her husband's." Holmes was deep in thought for some time. "Well," he said at last, "I think I will have to go there and look at it myself." Stanley Hopkins gave a cry of happiness. "Thank you, sir. That will really ease my mind." Holmes shook his finger at the inspector. "It would have been easier a week ago," he said, "but even now my visit may still be useful. Watson, if you have the time, I would be glad if you came with me. If you call a carriage, Hopkins, we will be ready to leave for Forest Row in 15 minutes. After we got off at the small station, we drove for several miles through what remained of a large forest. This forest had once been part of the great woods that held back the Saxon invaders for a long time, the thick and difficult Weald which protected Britain for 60 years. Large parts of it have been cut down because this was the place of the first ironworks in the country, and the trees were used to melt iron. Now the richer areas in the north have taken over this work, and only these damaged woods and large marks in the ground show what happened in the past. Here, in an open space on a green hillside, stood a long, low stone house. A curved road through the fields led to it. Closer to the road, and surrounded on 3 sides by bushes, was a small building, with one window and a door facing us. It was the place where the murder had happened. Stanley Hopkins first took us to the house, where he introduced us to a tired, gray-haired woman, the widow of the murdered man. Her thin, deeply lined face and the fearful look in her red eyes showed the years of suffering and bad treatment she had lived through. With her was her daughter, a pale, fair-haired girl. Her eyes shone with anger as she told us that she was glad her father was dead, and that she was thankful to the person who had killed him. It was a terrible home that Black Peter Carey had created for himself, and we felt relieved to be back outside in the sunlight, walking along a path across the fields that had been made by the dead man's footsteps. The small building was very simple, with wooden walls and a roof of shingles. There was one window next to the door, and another on the opposite side. Stanley Hopkins took the key from his pocket and bent down to open the door, but then he stopped and looked surprised. "Someone has tried to break in," he said. There was no doubt about it. The wood was cut, and the fresh scratches showed white through the paint, as if they had just been made. Holmes had been looking at the window. "Someone has tried to force this as well. Whoever it was did not succeed. He must have been a very poor thief." "This is very strange," said the inspector. "I'm sure these marks were not here yesterday evening." "Maybe someone curious from the village," I suggested. "Very unlikely. Few people would dare to enter the grounds, and even fewer would try to break into the cabin. What do you think, Mr. Holmes?" "I think that luck is helping us." "You mean that the person will come back?" "That is very likely. He came expecting to find the door open. He tried to get in with the blade of a very small knife. He could not do it. What will he do next?" "Come back the next night with a better tool." That is what I think. It will be our mistake if we are not here to meet him. For now, let me see inside the cabin." The sides of the crime had been cleaned away, but the furniture inside the small room was still in the same position as on the night of the murder. For 2 hours, Holmes carefully examined every object, but his face showed that he was not successful. Only once did he stop during his careful search. "Have you taken anything from this shelf, Hopkins?" "No, I have moved nothing." "Something has been taken. There is less dust in this corner of the shelf than in other places. It may have been a book lying on its side, or it may have been a box. Well, I can do no more here. Let us walk in these beautiful woods, Watson, and spend a few hours with the birds and flowers. We will meet you here later, Hopkins, and see if we can get closer to the man who visited this place during the night." It was past 11 o'clock when we set up our small ambush. Hopkins wanted to leave the door of the hut open, but Holmes thought this would make the stranger suspicious. The lock was very simple, and only a strong blade was needed to push it open. Holmes also suggested that we should wait, not inside the hut, but outside among the bushes near the far window. In this way we could watch the man if he lit a light, and see why he had come secretly at night. It was a long and quiet wait, but it also brought a feeling of excitement, like a hunter waiting by a water pool for a thirsty wild animal. What kind of dangerous person would come out of the darkness? Would it be a fierce criminal who would fight like a wild animal? Or would it be a sneaky and cowardly man, dangerous only to the weak and unprotected? We stayed completely silent, hiding in the bushes, waiting for whatever might happen. At first, the footsteps of a few late villagers or voices from the village made the wait easier. But slowly these sounds disappeared, and complete silence surrounded us. Only the sound of a distant church bell marked the passing of time, and we could hear the soft noise of light rain falling on the leaves above us. At 2:30, the bell rang again. It was the darkest time before morning when we suddenly reacted to a quiet but sharp sound from the direction of the gate. Someone had entered the path. There was another long silence, and I began to worry that it was a false alarm, when we heard quiet footsteps on the other side of the hut. A moment later, there was the sound of metal scraping and knocking. The man was trying to open the lock. This time he was more skillful, or he had a better tool, because there was a sudden snap and the sound of the door opening. Then a match was lit, and immediately after, the steady light of a candle filled the inside of the hut. Through the thin curtain, all our eyes were fixed on what was happening inside. The visitor in the night was a young man, thin and weak, with a black mustache that made his pale face look even whiter. He could not have been much older than 20. I have never seen anyone so frightened. His teeth were clearly shaking, and his whole body trembled. He was dressed like a gentleman, wearing a Norfolk jacket and knickerbockers, with a cloth cap on his head. We watched as he looked around with scared eyes. Then he put the end of the candle on the table and moved out of our sight into one corner. He came back with a large book, one of the log books that stood in a row on the shelf. Leaning over the table, he quickly turned the pages until he found what he was looking for. Then, with an angry movement of his fist, he closed the book, put it back in the corner, and blew out the candle. He had just turned to leave the hut when Hopkins grabbed him by the collar, and I heard his loud cry of fear when he realized he was caught. The candle was lit again, and there was our poor prisoner, shaking and shrinking in the detective's grip. He sat down on the sea chest and looked helplessly from one of us to another. "Now, my good fellow," said Stanley Hopkins, "who are you, and what are you doing here?" The man made an effort to calm himself and looked at us. "You are detectives, I suppose," he said. You think I am connected to the death of Captain Peter Carey? I assure you that I am innocent." "We will see about that," said Hopkins. "First, what is your name?" "My name is John Hopley Nelligan." I saw Holmes and Hopkins quickly look at each other. "What are you doing here?" "Can I speak privately?" "No, certainly not." "Then why should I tell you?" "If you do not answer, it may go badly for you at the trial." The young man showed pain on his face. "Well, I will tell you," he said. "Why not? But I do not like the idea that this old scandal will become known again. Have you ever heard of Dawson and Nelligan?" I could see from Hopkins's face that he had not, but Holmes was very interested. "You mean the bankers from the West Country?" he said. "They failed with a loss of $1 million, ruined many families in Cornwall, and Nelligan disappeared." "Exactly. Nelligan was my father." At last we were learning something clear. But there still seemed to be a big distance between a banker who ran away and Captain Peter Carey, who was killed and fixed to the wall with his own harpoon. We all listened carefully to the young man's story. It was really my father who was involved. Dawson had already retired. I was only 10 years old at the time, but I was old enough to feel the shame and horror of it. People have always said that my father stole all the securities and ran away. That is not true. He believed that if he had time to sell them properly, everything would be fine and all the people he owed money to would be paid in full. He left in his small yacht for Norway just before a warrant was issued for his arrest. I remember that last night when he said goodbye to my mother. He left us a list of the securities he was taking, and he promised that he would return with his honor cleared, and that no one who trusted him would lose money. But no news was ever heard from him again. Both he and the yacht disappeared completely. My mother and I believed that he, the yacht, and the securities were all lost at sea. However, we had a loyal friend, a businessman, and he discovered some time ago that some of the securities my father had taken had appeared again on the London market. You can imagine how surprised we were. I spent months trying to follow their path, and finally, after many difficulties, I found that the first seller was Captain Peter Carey, the owner of this hut. Of course, I tried to learn more about him. I found that he had been the captain of a whaling ship that was expected to return from the Arctic seas at the same time my father was sailing to Norway. That autumn was very stormy, with many strong winds from the south. My father's yacht may have been pushed north and met Captain Peter Carey's ship. If that happened, what became of my father? In any case, if I could prove, from Peter Carey's records, how these securities appeared on the market, it would show that my father had not sold them himself, and that he did not take them for his own profit. I came to Sussex to meet the captain, but at that moment his terrible death happened. I read in the inquest a description of his cabin, which said that the old logbooks of his ship were kept there. I thought that if I could see what happened in August 1883 on the Sea Unicorn, I might discover what happened to my father. I tried last night to get those logbooks, but I could not open the door. Tonight I tried again and succeeded, but I found that the pages about that month had been torn out of the book. At that moment, I was caught by you. "Is that everything?" asked Hopkins. "Yes, that is everything." His eyes moved nervously as he spoke. "You have nothing more to tell us?" He hesitated. "No, nothing." "You were not here before last night?" "No." "Then how do you explain that?" cried Hopkins, as he held up the notebook, which clearly showed the initials of our prisoner on the first page and the blood stain on the cover. The unhappy man broke down. He covered his face with his hands and shook all over. "Where did you find it?" he groaned. "I did not know. I thought I had lost it at the hotel." "That is enough," said Hopkins firmly. Anything more you want to say, you can say in court. You will come with me now to the police station. Well, Mr. Holmes, I am very grateful to you and your friend for coming to help me. As things have turned out, your presence was not needed, and I could have solved the case myself. But I still thank you very much. Rooms have been booked for you at the Brambletie Hotel, so we can walk to the village together. Well, Watson, what do you think about it? Asked Holmes as we traveled back the next morning. I can see that you are not satisfied. Oh yes, my dear Watson, I am completely satisfied. At the same time, I do not like Stanley Hopkins's methods. I am disappointed in him. I expected better from him. One should always look for another possible explanation and be prepared for it. That is the first rule of criminal investigation. So what is the other explanation? It is the line of investigation that I have been following myself. It may lead to nothing, I do not know. But I will follow it to the end. Several letters were waiting for Holmes at Baker Street. He quickly picked one up, opened it, and suddenly laughed with great satisfaction. Excellent, Watson. The other explanation is becoming clearer. Do you have telegraph forms? Please write 2 messages for me. Sumner, shipping agent, Ratcliffe Highway. Send 3 men to arrive tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Basil. That is the name I use there. The other message is Inspector Stanley Hopkins, 46, Lord Street, Brixton. Come to breakfast tomorrow at 9:30. Important. Send a reply if you cannot come. Sherlock Holmes. There, Watson. This terrible case has troubled me for 10 days. Now I will put it completely out of my mind. Tomorrow, I hope we will hear the end of it forever. At the exact time, Inspector Stanley Hopkins arrived, and we all sat down to the excellent breakfast that Mrs. Hudson had prepared. The young detective was in a very good mood because of his success.